I sat in a federal courtroom watching my former boss get sentenced to 15 years in prison. 6 months earlier, he'd destroyed my life with a smile on his face. But when you fire someone who knows where all the bodies are buried, especially when those bodies are 40 stories of counterfeit steel and concrete, you better make sure they stay quiet. Richard Sterling made one mistake. He thought taking away my job would break me. Instead, it gave me nothing left to lose. My name is Michael Porter, and I spent 25 years as a senior structural consultant. Every morning at 5:47 a.m., I'd fill my thermos with coffee and drive to whatever construction site needed inspection. I had a reputation for finding problems others missed. Richard Sterling, managing partner at Mitchell Engineering Group, used to call me his insurance policy. The firm handled structural assessments for most of the commercial high-rises going up downtown. That reputation took 25 years to build. It took Sterling 6 weeks to destroy it. The Metro North Tower was going to be downtown's crown jewel, 60 floors of premium office space. By November, we'd reached the 40th floor, and that's when I noticed the problem with the structural composite in the core supports. The molecular composition reports were off, not dramatically, but enough to make me run tests 3 times. Under sustained load and temperature variation, this composite would become brittle. 5 to 7 years, then microfractures. By year 10, the building would be a death trap. "You're being paranoid," Sterling said when I brought him the reports. His office always smelled like leather and ambition. 3 independent labs cleared it. "Labs you chose," I pointed out. "Michael, I need you to sign off on this. The investors are getting nervous about delays. Then use different materials." His expression hardened. "Sign the papers." "No." Security escorted me out an hour later. A quarter-century reduced to a cardboard box and a letter citing departmental restructuring. But the timing couldn't have been worse. My wife Linda had just been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition. Her treatments cost $12,000 a month. Without insurance, we had maybe 6 months of savings. That night, Linda held my hand despite the exhaustion from her medication. "You did what was right," she said, though I could see the fear behind her eyes. "But Michael, if that building isn't safe." She knew me too well. I couldn't let it go. Providence, 2014. I'd made an error in load distribution calculations. Transposed 2 numbers that reduced the safety margin from 300% to 250%. Still well above code requirements. I caught it myself within a week. Fixed it before anyone noticed. Or so I thought. Sterling had known all along. Kept it as insurance. The error never endangered anyone. But out of context, it could end my career. That changed everything. This wasn't just about bad materials. Sterling was planning something bigger. I couldn't use phones or computers. Sterling had connections throughout the industry. So I went analog. Public records, physical documents, an old film camera from our garage. I became a ghost haunting municipal buildings and construction sites. The shell company supplying the composite, Premier Building Solutions, had been created just 8 months ago. Its board members were phantoms, but property records showed a pattern. The company's warehouse leases were all signed by the same notary, someone who also worked for Mitchell Engineering. The web was starting to reveal itself. The county records office became my second home. Dorothy, the clerk who'd been there since the 70s, didn't ask questions when I requested boxes of property filings. "Shame what happened at Sterling's," she mentioned one afternoon. "Their loss, if you ask me." Premier Building Solutions owned 6 warehouses, all purchased within the last year. One address caught my attention, a facility in the industrial district that had failed safety inspections twice for improper chemical storage. I drove there before dawn, parked 3 blocks away, approached on foot like a morning jogger. Through a chain-link fence, I saw pallets of composite material, but the shipping labels were wrong. These weren't from certified manufacturers. They were counterfeits, probably made at a quarter of the cost. The facility had truckers parking overnight behind it. On my fourth visit, I saw workers tossing damaged materials into an unsecured dumpster. Legal salvage. I collected samples, photographed everything. Then a Mercedes pulled up. Anthony Russo, deputy building commissioner, greeted the warehouse foreman, and I watched an envelope pass between them. If the commission was compromised, official channels would get me buried. I reached out to Patricia Wong, an investigative journalist who'd exposed the mayor's corruption 2 years earlier. We met at a public library. "You have proof?" she asked, voice low. "Enough to start asking the right questions," I said, showing her the lab results from the legally obtained samples. "But if Russo's involved, this goes all the way up. I need you to hold the story until I can get more evidence on record." She studied the documents, her expression hardening. "My editor's been sitting on rumors about construction kickbacks for months. We've tracked 47 million in suspicious payments to offshore accounts. This connects everything. My brother Daniel, who did forensic accounting for divorce cases, helped trace the money. We met at a truck stop diner 40 miles outside the city. The scheme is sophisticated," he said, sketching on a napkin. "Sterling's skimming 60% of the savings, routing it through multiple offshore accounts. But there's a pattern." He showed me withdrawal schedules. Every month, 2 million goes to a medical facility in Switzerland. "There's more," Daniel continued, sliding another paper across the table. "Premier Building Solutions isn't just Sterling's creation. It's connected to a company called Fortress Logistics, registered in Delaware. They supply counterfeit materials to 12 other construction firms across 3 states. My coffee went cold. This wasn't just Sterling running a scam. He was part of something bigger. Fortress Logistics had been operating for 5 years, replacing legitimate building materials with counterfeits manufactured in facilities overseas. The chemical composition was close enough to pass basic inspection, but under stress testing, the molecular bonds would degrade 5 times faster than certified materials. I tracked down Tommy Brennan, former quality control at Fortress's supplier, fired for asking questions. At an airport bar, he was nervous, constantly watching the door. "They've got Rodriguez at the certification lab," Tommy said. "Takes 50 grand to swap test samples. Real materials get tested, fake ones shipped." He slid me a flash drive. 3 years of evidence, emails, recordings, shipping manifests. My predecessor had a convenient car accident. I'm flying out tonight. That drive has my sworn affidavit too, admissible in court, without me. The data on that drive revealed the full scope. 47 buildings across the eastern seaboard using compromised materials. Hotels, hospitals, schools. Sterling wasn't even a major player. He was middle management in an operation worth close to 200 million. The real puppet master was someone named Marcus Volkov, a developer who'd been investigated twice for construction fraud, but never charged. I spent 3 nights analyzing the patterns in the data. The scam had layers. First, they'd identify struggling construction firms with cash flow problems. Then they'd offer materials at 70% of market rate, claiming overstock or bulk purchase discounts. Once a firm used the materials once without issue, they'd become dependent on the savings. By the time anyone might notice problems, the shell companies would be dissolved, the money moved offshore, and the buildings would be ticking time bombs with no clear liability trail. That's when I learned about Sterling's son, James. Rare genetic condition, experimental treatment not covered by insurance. But now I understood. Sterling hadn't started this fraud for his son. He'd been recruited into it because of his son. Volkov had found his weakness and exploited it. Once Sterling took that first payment, he was trapped. The medical bills were the hook, but the threat of exposure was the line that kept him reeled in. I sat with that knowledge for 3 days, understanding why didn't excuse endangering thousands of lives, but it complicated things. Sterling wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. Patricia Wong held her story for 2 weeks while I gathered more evidence. We needed everything airtight before going public. 3 days before the commission meeting, Sterling made his move. He called me personally, first time since the firing. "I know what you're doing," he said. "That Providence mistake. I have the original files. Your signature on calculations that could have killed people. Drop this, or I'll destroy you." "Then we'll both go down," I told him, and hung up. But I knew I had to act fast. Russo wouldn't be at the regular commission meeting. He was too smart for that. But he'd certainly hear about it. I scheduled my testimony for the emergency session when he'd be out of town at a conference. The City Building Safety Commission met monthly in a basement room that hadn't been updated since the 80s. Commissioner Janet Phillips knew me from dozens of previous testimonies. "Michael, I heard you'd left Sterling's. I need to address the commission about the Metro North Tower." She gave me the floor. I started with my own confession. In 2014, I made a calculation error on the Providence project. Transposed 2 numbers that reduced the safety margin from 300% to 250%. Still above code, never a danger, but an error nonetheless. I corrected it within a week, but Richard Sterling knew. He's held it over me since. I placed my original calculations on the table, the error circled. I'm reporting myself because what I'm about to show you is more important than my reputation. The room went quiet. In that silence, I presented everything. Lab results from an independent facility I'd paid for myself. Photographs from the warehouse. Financial records Daniel had helped uncover. And Tommy Brennan's flash drive with evidence of a multi-state construction fraud ring. The composite would fail within a decade, potentially sooner in extreme weather. "How many buildings?" Phillips asked, her face growing pale as she scrolled through the data. 47 that we can confirm. Metro North is just one of them. This involves Marcus Volkov and Fortress Logistics. They've infiltrated the entire supply chain." Phillips immediately called an emergency session with federal authorities. By that evening, the FBI had halted construction on 7 projects simultaneously. Patricia Wong's story broke online within hours, now with full documentation. But Sterling had been tipped off by Russo, who'd been monitoring the commission from his conference. When federal agents arrived at Sterling's house the next morning, he was gone. For 2 weeks, Sterling stayed ahead of authorities. He tried to move the counterfeit materials, destroy evidence, even attempted to frame me for the fraud. But I'd anticipated this. Every piece of evidence I'd given the commission had backup copies in a safety deposit box, with instructions to release if anything happened to me. The FBI found him at a private airfield with a suitcase of cash and liquidated assets, nearly $2 million he'd been stockpiling since my first meeting with the commission, knowing this day might come. Within hours of arrest, Sterling flipped. He knew Volkov would have him killed in prison. He gave the FBI everything: names, accounts, the New Jersey warehouse manufacturing counterfeits. The trial revealed Sterling had been hemorrhaging money keeping James alive. When Volkov discovered this, he'd offered a devil's bargain. The jury convicted in 4 hours but recommended leniency for his cooperation. I testified for 3 days, laying out the technical evidence. Sterling watched me from the defense table, and once, during a recess, we made eye contact. He mouthed 2 words: "I'm sorry." I don't know if he meant for firing me or for what he'd done. Maybe both. My engineering license was suspended for 6 months due to the Providence admission, though the board noted the error had been caught and corrected before any construction began. and my voluntary disclosure was considered a mitigating factor. When it was reinstated, I took a consulting position with a smaller firm, 3 days a week. The federal whistleblower settlement took 18 months to process, but eventually covered Linda's treatment costs, and then some. 15% of the recovered funds from the fraud, nearly $3 million after taxes. The Volkov investigation led to 37 arrests across 4 states. Buildings were retrofitted, careers destroyed, companies bankrupted. Rodriguez, the lab technician, got 8 years. Volkov himself got 30 to life. The FBI had been building a RICO case for years, and our evidence was the cornerstone they needed. Tommy Brennan's affidavit and evidence proved crucial, though he never surfaced again. But the real victory was that no buildings collapsed. No families were crushed under counterfeit concrete. We'd caught it in time. The Metro North Tower stood empty for 2 years while insurance companies in the city fought in court. Eventually, they agreed to retrofit it with proper materials, cheaper than demolition and rebuilding. Every beam was X-rayed, every joint tested, suspect materials replaced piece by piece. It reopened as Meridian Center last year, marketed as the most inspected building in America. Every time I drive past, I think about foundations, how one weakness can bring down everything built above it. Linda went into remission last spring. We sold the house, moved to a smaller place near the lake. I still wake up at 5:47 every morning, still drink coffee from the same thermos. Some habits become part of your structure. Sterling's serving his time at a minimum security facility upstate. His son James is still fighting. Sterling's cooperation earned him the ability to legally transfer his remaining assets to a medical trust before they were seized. The treatment continues, though the prognosis remains uncertain. I don't feel satisfaction about any of it. Just waste. All that destruction. And it might not even save the person he was trying to protect. People ask if I regret destroying Sterling's life. I tell them the truth. Sterling destroyed himself the moment he chose to build on lies. I just documented the structural failure. Last month, the city announced the Metro North Tower will be retrofitted with proper materials. The new firm handling it asked me to consult. I declined. Some buildings carry too many ghosts. But I still inspect, still look for the flaws others miss, because that's what I do. I find the weaknesses before they become disasters. Sometimes that means destroying something that looks solid but is rotten at its core. The morning after Sterling's sentencing, Linda asked me if it was over. The building's condemned, I told her, but the foundation's clear. She understood. We'd both spent our lives building things. Her teaching third graders to read, me ensuring structures stood safely. We knew that sometimes you have to tear down what's dangerous, no matter how impressive it looks from the outside. 3 years have passed. Linda's still in remission. We live by the lake where I can see the city skyline. The Meridian Center stands tall now, every floor occupied. I received a letter from someone in a building I'd approved years ago, thanking me for keeping their family safe. They'll never know how close I came to being the inspector who stayed quiet. Buildings tell stories in their bones. The story of Metro North isn't about the tower that nearly failed. It's about the cost of integrity. Every structure faces its test eventually. The difference is in the foundation, in those hidden places where truth meets pressure. And truth, like gravity, always wins.